The active shooter had the entire town in lockdown. Police were 20 minutes away. But what the gunman didn't know was that the quiet woman who sold hunting rifles had spent 15 years hunting much more dangerous prey. Welcome to Beneath Word Stories. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden courage and split-second decisions, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. These moments of truth matter. Sarah Martinez had been selling guns for 3 years now, and she was good at it. Not flashy good, quiet good. The kind that made customers feel comfortable, confident, like they were talking to someone who truly understood their needs. Her shop, Clearwater Arms, sat on the corner of Main and 3rd Street in Millfield, Montana, population 8,400, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Except Sarah had managed to keep the biggest one of all. Most mornings, she'd arrive at 7 a.m. sharp, flip the sign to open, and brew the first pot of coffee. The bell above the door would start chiming around 8:30 with the regulars. Ranchers needing ammunition, hunters preparing for deer season, collectors looking for something special. "Morning, Sarah," called Tom Hendricks, pushing through the door with his usual Wednesday routine. Retired county clerk, widower for 6 years, always bought exactly 12 X rounds every 2 weeks for target practice at his late wife's family ranch. "Morning, Tom. Same as usual. You know it, though I was thinking about upgrading my scope, something with better clarity at distance." Sarah nodded, already walking toward the optics display. "How far are you shooting?" "About 400 yards, maybe 500 on a clear day." She pulled down a Leupold Phi X 3 HD. "This'll serve you well. 4.5 to 14 times magnification, crystal clear glass. Won't break your retirement budget either." Tom hefted the scope, peering through it at the far wall. "You always know exactly what I need before I do. How'd you get so good at reading people?" Sarah's hands paused for just a fraction of a second while counting his ammunition. "Experience," she said simply. "You learn to pay attention." What Tom didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Sarah's experience included 15 years as an ATF special agent, specializing in undercover operations within domestic terrorist groups. She'd lived among militia members in Idaho, survivalists in Oregon, and white supremacist compounds in rural Arkansas. She'd learned to read micro-expressions, vocal stress patterns, and behavioral tells that could mean the difference between maintaining cover or ending up dead in a ditch. But those days were over. Officially retired at 42 after a final operation went sideways, leaving her with a purple heart she'd never display and nightmares she'd never discuss. Now she sold hunting rifles to ranchers and helped teenagers pick out their first .22s for prairie dog hunting. It was a quiet life, a safe life. The bell chimed again as Tom left. Sarah glanced at the clock. 10:15 a.m. The lunch rush wouldn't start for another hour. She decided to reorganize the ammunition display, something that always calmed her mind. That's when she heard it. Population pop, pop, pop. Sarah froze. Every muscle in her body recognized that sound. Not fireworks, not a backfiring truck. Gunfire, multiple weapons, close. She moved to the front window and peered through the blinds. Downtown Millfield stretched before her. The pharmacy, Jensen's Diner, the post office, the community center. People were moving strangely, not walking, running. Her phone buzzed. Emergency alert. Active shooter situation. Downtown Millfield shelter in place. Avoid Main Street area. Law enforcement responding. Sarah's training kicked in before her civilian mind could process the words. She was already moving. Already analyzing. The gunfire had come from the direction of the community center, 3 blocks east. Based on the sound signature, at least 2 different weapons, 1 handgun, 1 rifle. Police response time to Millfield, 18 to 20 minutes from the county seat. Ambulance, 25 minutes minimum. Casualties, unknown but increasing every second. Her hands were already reaching for her keys, muscle memory overriding 3 years of selling hunting licenses and recommending deer stands. Sarah stood behind her counter, keys in hand, staring at a locked cabinet that hadn't been opened in 3 years. Inside that cabinet was everything she'd thought she'd never need again. Tactical vest, spare magazines, medical kit, communications equipment, and her service weapon, a Glock 23.40 caliber that had been with her through operations in 7 states. Another burst of gunfire echoed from downtown, closer now. Her phone rang. Jenny Morrison, who worked at the post office. "Sarah? Sarah, are you there?" "I'm here, Jenny. Are you safe?" "I'm locked in the back office, but Sarah, it's bad. Really bad. There are at least 2 of them, maybe 3. They started at the community center during the senior breakfast. Mrs. Patterson, oh God, Sarah, I saw Mrs. Patterson ... Jenny's voice broke into sobs. Sarah closed her eyes. Martha Patterson, 73 years old, volunteered at the animal shelter, made the best apple pie in 3 counties, had bought a small revolver from Sarah 6 months ago for home protection after her husband died. Jenny, listen to me. Stay exactly where you are. Don't come out for anyone except uniformed police. Do you understand? But Sarah, they're moving down Main Street. The diner's right across from the post office. People are trapped in there. Kids, Sarah. There are kids in there. Sarah looked at the cabinet again. She thought about Tom Hendricks, who'd been headed to the diner after leaving her shop, about the Morrison twins, who helped their mom at the post office on school holidays, about every customer who'd walked through her door, trusting her expertise, treating her like family. She thought about her oath, the one she'd taken 18 years ago, standing in a federal building in Quantico. I solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Some oaths don't have expiration dates. Sarah opened the cabinet. Her tactical vest still fit perfectly. The Glock felt familiar in her hand, 13 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. She grabbed 2 spare magazines, the medical kit, and a tactical radio that she hoped was still programmed to law enforcement frequencies. And then she caught sight of herself in the mirror behind the gun display. 3 years ago, she'd been Special Agent Sarah Martinez, ATF. Today, she was just Sarah, small-town gun shop owner. But right now, with gunfire echoing through her adopted hometown, she needed to be both. She flipped the shop sign to closed, grabbed her keys, and headed for the back door. The alley behind her shop provided cover as she made her way toward Main Street. The gunfire had stopped, which was either very good or very bad. Sarah's experience told her it was probably bad. Active shooters often paused to reload, change positions, or select new targets. Her radio crackled to life. County dispatch. Multiple casualties confirmed at Millfield Community Center. Suspects last seen moving east on Main Street. All units converge on Millfield. ETA 15 minutes. 15 minutes. An eternity in a situation like this. Sarah reached the corner of Main and 2nd. From here, she could see the community center. Front doors blown open, windows shattered, people running in panic. The diner was 2 blocks ahead, post office across from it. That's where the shooters were heading. She keyed her radio. Dispatch, this is Agent Martinez, ATF. I'm on scene in Millfield, requesting permission to engage. Silence. Then, Agent Martinez, show your badge number and current assignment. Sarah hesitated. Technically, she was retired. Technically, she had no authority. Technically, she should wait for backup. Another burst of gunfire came from the direction of the diner. Dispatch, I'm a civilian now, but I'm trained and I'm here. People are dying. Negative, civilian. Maintain distance and provide intelligence only. Do not engage. Sarah turned off the radio. Ichio. Moving through Millfield's downtown while avoiding the shooters required every skill Sarah had learned in 15 years of tactical operations. She used storefront alcoves for cover, stayed low, and moved in patterns that would make her difficult to track or target. The first body she found was behind Henderson's hardware store. Male, mid-40s, single gunshot wound to the chest. Sarah didn't recognize him, probably a tourist or someone from the county seat. She checked for a pulse anyway. Nothing. She could hear voices now coming from the direction of the diner. Male voices, calm and methodical. Not panicked, not random. This was planned. Sarah crept closer, using parked cars as cover. Jensen's Diner sat at the intersection of Main and 4th, a classic small-town restaurant with big windows and a lunch counter that had served the community for 40 years. Through the windows, she could see people huddled on the floor. 2 figures moved through the diner systematically. Both wore dark clothing, both carried rifles. A AR-15 platform based on the silhouettes. One had a tactical vest, the other a simple chest rig. Sarah assessed the situation with practiced efficiency. 2 confirmed shooters. Unknown number of hostages inside the diner. Shooters appeared to be controlling the scene, not randomly firing. No sign of explosive devices, both shooters focused on the interior of the diner. This wasn't a random act of violence. This was an operation. Her phone vibrated. Text message from Jenny at the post office. They're asking for someone named Martinez. "Sarah, they're asking for you." Sarah's blood went cold. She thought back through every case she'd worked, every operation she'd been part of. In 15 years of undercover work, she'd made enemies. People who blamed her for arrests, convictions, destroyed organizations. Most of them were in federal prison, but not all of them. Her radio, which she'd turned back on, crackled, "All units, be advised. Suspects are actively seeking an individual named Martinez, possible connection to federal law enforcement." Sarah closed her eyes. This wasn't random. This was personal. They'd found her. The question was, how many innocent people were they willing to kill to get to her? She moved closer to the diner, using a delivery truck as cover. Through the front window, she could see the hostages clearly now. 12 people, maybe 15, lying face down on the floor. She recognized most of them. Bob Jensen, the owner, the Morrison twins, Tom Hendricks, who'd left her shop not 2 hours ago. One of the shooters was standing near the lunch counter, rifle pointed at the hostages. The other was by the front door, scanning the street, waiting for her. Sarah's training told her to wait for backup. 15 armed federal agents with proper equipment and tactical support could resolve this situation with minimal risk to hostages. Her heart told her that in 12 minutes, these people would be dead. She made her choice. Sarah's approach had to be perfect. 2 armed suspects, multiple hostages, and no backup meant there would be no second chances. One mistake would turn a rescue operation into a massacre. She circled around to the back of the diner, moving through the alley that ran behind Main Street. The back door to Jensen's led into the kitchen, a layout she knew well from 3 years of regular coffee and conversation. The door was unlocked. Why would they secure it? As far as they knew, she was just a gun shop owner who would either run or hide. They had no idea she'd spent a decade and a half learning how to do exactly what she was about to do. Sarah entered the kitchen low and quiet. The familiar smell of grease and coffee was now mixed with something else, cordite and fear. She could hear voices from the main dining area. "Told you she's in town, Clearwater Arms, corner of Main and 3rd. She thinks she can hide, but we know exactly who she is. Maybe she ran. Maybe she got the smart message and got out of town. Agent Sarah Martinez doesn't run. Trust me, I studied her for 3 years in federal prison. She'll come. She's too much of a hero not to." Sarah recognized the voice now. Derek Kowalski, white supremacist militia leader from Montana. She'd helped build the case that put him away for weapons trafficking and conspiracy. Released 6 months ago after serving 8 years. The other voice she didn't recognize, but it didn't matter. What mattered was position and timing. She peered around the kitchen doorway. Kowalski was by the front window, AR-15 at the ready, scanning the street. The second shooter was controlling the hostages, about 15 feet away from the kitchen entrance. Sarah's tactical training kicked in. 2 targets, both armed, both dangerous. Hostages in the line of fire. No room for error. She steadied her Glock, breathed out halfway, and made her presence known. "Derek Kowalski, it's been a long time." Both shooters spun toward her voice, but Sarah was already moving. She put 2 rounds center mass into the closer shooter before he could bring his rifle to bear. He dropped immediately. Kowalski was faster, more experienced. His first burst went wide as Sarah dove behind the lunch counter, but his second chewed through the Formica inches from her head. "There she is," Kowalski shouted, "the federal bitch who destroyed my family." "Your family destroyed itself," Sarah called back, moving along the counter. "I just documented it." She could hear Kowalski moving, trying to flank her position. The hostages were whimpering, pressing themselves against the floor. She needed to end this quickly before panic took over completely. "You cost me 8 years of my life." "You cost Jimmy Henderson his life," Sarah replied, referencing Kowalski's bombing of a federal building that had killed a security guard. "And Martha Patterson, and whoever else you shot today. Collateral damage. This is about justice. This is about murder." Sarah rose from behind the counter and put 3 rounds into Derek Kowalski's chest. He dropped his rifle, staggered backward, and fell against the front window. The sudden silence was deafening. "Everyone stay down," Sarah called to the hostages. "Police will be here in a few minutes. You're safe now." She moved carefully to each shooter, checking for weapons and confirming they were no longer a threat. Both were dead. As she knelt beside Tom Hendricks to check if he was injured, the old man looked up at her with wide eyes. "Sarah, what? How did you?" She helped him to his feet. "Long story, Tom. Are you hurt? He shook his head, staring at her tactical vest, her weapon, the professional way she'd handled the situation. Who are you really? Sarah looked around the diner at the people she'd served for 3 years. Customers who'd become friends, friends who'd become family. All of them staring at her like they'd never seen her before. Which, in a way, they hadn't. The aftermath of a shooting is never clean, never simple. By the time the county sheriff's department arrived, followed by state police and eventually a federal task force, Sarah had secured the scene, provided medical aid to 3 wounded hostages, and given preliminary statements to 6 different agencies. But the hardest conversation was with Tom Hendricks, who sat across from her in the back booth of Jensen's diner 4 hours later, after the bodies had been removed and the investigators had finished their initial work. A TF, huh? Tom sipped his coffee with hands that were finally steady. Federal agent. Was, Sarah corrected. I retired 3 years ago, the day I moved to Millfield. 15 years undercover? Sarah nodded. Domestic terrorism, militia groups, white supremacists, anti-government organizations. I'd spend months, sometimes years, living among them, learning their plans, gathering evidence. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Dangerous work. Very. And Kowalski? He was someone you put away. Leader of a Montana militia group called the Constitutional Patriots. They were planning to bomb the federal building in Billings. We stopped them, but not before they killed a security guard in a practice run. Tom nodded slowly. So he came here for revenge. He came here to finish what he started 8 years ago. Sarah looked out the window at the crime scene tape still fluttering in the evening breeze. I thought I'd left that life behind. Thought I could just disappear. But you couldn't. Apparently not. Tom reached across the table and patted her hand. Sarah, I don't care if you were FBI, ATF, or the damn CIA. You saved our lives today. All of us. Through the diner window, Sarah could see other familiar faces gathering on the sidewalk. Jenny Morrison from the post office. Bob Jensen, whose diner would need weeks of repairs. The Morrison twins, safe because their mother had kept them home with a cold. One by one, they looked through the window at her. Not with fear or suspicion, but with something else entirely. Gratitude. Sheriff Mills approached their booth. Sarah, I need to ask you a few more questions for my report. Of course. The federal boys are calling this a clean shoot, self-defense and defense of others. But I need to understand, how did a gun shop owner take down 2 armed suspects with military-grade weapons? Sarah looked at Tom, who was listening intently. She looked at the small crowd gathering outside. These people deserved the truth. Sheriff, my name is Sarah Martinez. Special Agent Sarah Martinez, ATF, retired. For 15 years, I worked undercover operations against domestic terrorist organizations. I moved to Millfield to start over, to have a quiet life, selling hunting rifles and helping folks protect their families. She paused, looking around the diner that had become her second home. But today, when my neighbors needed help, my training kicked in. I did what I was trained to do. Sheriff Mills nodded. And we're damn grateful you did. Word spread through Millfield faster than a grass fire. By evening, everyone knew that Sarah Martinez wasn't just the friendly gun shop owner who remembered their ammunition preferences and never oversold them on unnecessary equipment. She was Agent Martinez, who had spent 15 years infiltrating the most dangerous domestic terror groups in America, who had prevented bombings, assassinations, and mass casualty events, who had testified before Congress about the growing threat of homegrown extremism, and who had given it all up for a quiet life in a small Montana town, only to have that life shattered by the past she'd tried to escape. 3 weeks later, Sarah reopened Clearwater Arms. She'd expected the business to dry up. Who wants to buy guns from a federal agent, even a retired one? But the opposite happened. Her first customer was Tom Hendricks. I'd like to upgrade my home defense situation, he said, setting a thick envelope on the counter. Something reliable, something that'll stop a threat. Sarah looked at the envelope. It was full of cash. Tom, this is way too much money. It's not just from me. The whole town chipped in. We figured if you're going to be our protector, you might need some better equipment. Sarah opened the envelope. There was enough money to completely upgrade her security systems, buy new tactical gear, and still have plenty left over. I'm not anyone's protector, she said quietly. I'm just a gun shop owner. Tom smiled. Agent Martinez, with respect, that's bullshit, and we both know it. Over the following weeks, Sarah's customer base changed. Along with the usual ranchers and hunters came state police officers asking for tactical training, sheriff's deputies wanting to upgrade their equipment, federal agents who'd heard about the Millfield incident and wanted to meet the legend who'd taken down 2 armed suspects with no backup. But the most meaningful change was simpler. Jenny Morrison stopped by with coffee every Tuesday morning. Bob Jensen brought her lunch from the diner. No charge, he said, not ever. The Morrison twins helped her reorganize inventory on weekends, refusing payment, but accepting stories about her time in the field. Sarah had spent 3 years trying to be invisible, trying to blend into a small town where nothing ever happened. Now she realized she'd never been invisible at all. She'd just been home. Late one evening, as she was closing up shop, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she recognized, ATF headquarters in Washington. Agent Martinez, this is Deputy Director Harrison. Sir, I'm retired. I know, but we've got a situation developing. Domestic terror cell, Montana-Idaho border. They're well-funded, well-armed, and they're planning something big. We need someone who understands how they think. Sarah looked around her shop, at the community she'd come to love, at the life she'd built. Sir, with all due respect, I'm done with undercover work. I'm not asking you to go undercover. I'm asking you to consult, train our agents, help us understand what we're facing. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Part-time? She finally asked. Very part-time. Maybe 1 week a month. You'd keep your shop, your life in Millfield. But when we need your expertise, I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. After she hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet of her shop, surrounded by rifles and ammunition and the tools of protection. She thought about Derek Kowalski and the hatred that had driven him to kill innocent people. She thought about the federal agents who were still out there, still fighting that fight. And she thought about Tom Hendricks and Jenny Morrison and the Morrison twins and all the people in Millfield who had accepted her completely, both sides of her. Maybe there was a way to serve both lives. Maybe she didn't have to choose between Agent Martinez and Sarah, the gun shop owner. Maybe she could be both. The next morning, she called Deputy Director Harrison back. 1 week a month, she said. I train your agents, I consult on cases, but I come home to Millfield. Deal. And sir, if you ever need someone in the field again, someone who understands how these groups think, how they operate. Yes? You know my number. Sarah Martinez hung up the phone and flipped her shop sign to open. She had a community to serve, a business to run, and a life to live. But if America needed Agent Martinez again, she'd be ready. Some oaths don't have expiration dates. Some skills never fade. And sometimes the person you were and the person you've become aren't 2 different people at all. Sometimes they're the same person, finally whole. 6 months later, a news crew from the regional station came to Millfield to do a story about the hero gun shop owner. Sarah agreed to be interviewed, but only on one condition. They had to include interviews with the real heroes, the hostages who'd kept calm under pressure, the first responders who'd arrived to help, and the community that had rallied around each other in the aftermath. When the reporter asked her what she wanted people to know about what happened that day, Sarah's answer was simple. Sometimes the person standing next to you, selling you coffee, teaching your kids, fixing your car, has a story you'd never imagine. Most of the time, that story doesn't matter. But sometimes, when everything goes wrong, it's the only thing that matters. She paused, looking out the window at the streets of Millfield, where life had returned to its peaceful rhythm. The heroes aren't always the ones you expect. Sometimes they're just the ones who show up. The interview aired on a Thursday evening. By Friday morning, Sarah had received calls from 3 other small towns, asking if she'd consider opening satellite shops. She declined politely. She already had everything she needed right there in Millfield, Montana. Population 8,400, where everyone knew everyone, and some secrets were worth keeping until the moment they needed to save lives. And Sarah Martinez, gun shop owner and retired federal agent, was exactly where she belonged.